Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. Story number 1. My encounter with the other side began with a car accident on the night of January 28, 1982. I was 20 years old at the time. I was going back to my friend's house. It was late and rain was falling on my windshield. After a successful rush party, we had just left my fraternity house. My friend Joe pulled his car into one of two left-hand turn lanes as we approached a large intersection near campus. As I approached the intersection, I noticed that the light for us was red and the cross-traffic light was yellow. I thought I had time and pulled into the turn lane to Joe's right. I entered the intersection at about 5 miles per hour as soon as the light turned green. Joe's car and the rain on my side window obscured my view of the speeding car to my left. I was smashed into by the car running the now red light as soon as I cleared the front end of Joe's car. The other driver was over the legal limit of intoxication. I was gasping for air the next thing I knew. My ribs had fractured. My diaphragm had ruptured. My left lung had collapsed. The majority of my internal organs were lacerated and bleeding, and my head had shattered the driver's side window. I was starting to go into shock. The last thing I remembered was grabbing the front of the paramedic's coat as he worked on me. "Help me. I can't breathe," I pleaded in hushed tones. Something was not right. I remember telling myself that for a brief moment, I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Then it hit me. I just died, I thought. Oh my God, I just died. I had a moment of despair, but it was only a fleeting feeling. The feeling of despair was replaced by the knowledge that my death was exactly what should have happened right then. I'm supposed to be dead right now, I thought to myself. And as I said that to myself, I felt as if I were looking down to my left, in my mind's eye, because I couldn't see any tangible body. I was looking down to the left at what I could call an earthly representation. Not exactly a view of the earth from space, but a very similar perspective. I looked up and to the right after acknowledging this view for a moment. My orientation felt like I was now facing forward, going up and forward as I gazed up and to the right. The thought of going this route made me happy and comforted. I started seeing little movie clips appear in front of my eyes as I moved up and forward. The short clips were of scenes from my childhood, such as me and my brother Dale laughing and talking in the backyard. These clips passed quickly and they made me happy. The next sensation I had was a slowing of my upward and forward movement. I could feel a presence next to me now. I couldn't see any more, but I knew someone was there. I felt as if I were now standing at the door to a dark room. I was looking into a black and dark room, but I could make out the subtle distinct shapes in the middle of it. I could still feel someone nearby, almost as if they were mentally directing me where to look next. This guide compelled me to look at the figures that were now becoming more visible in the center of the room. They now appeared to be a choir of black-robed beings, seated on tiers similar to those used by choirs when performing. Those beings did not appear to be looking back at me. Instead, they appeared to be looking away. Just as I was thinking, I wonder who they are. They all turned toward me at the same time, and a bright light shone from where their eyes and mouth would be. They didn't have faces, just bright beams of light streaming at, through, and into me. At that precise moment, I felt a powerful exchange between myself and the beings of light. I had the impression that all of the questions I'd ever wanted answered were answered at the same time. It wasn't that I knew a specific answer. Rather, I knew everything there was to know. Ever. I also had the impression that as I received this knowledge from the beings of light, I gave them all of the unique experiences I had accumulated during my time on Earth. They gave me what they had, and I gave them what I could. This exchange was extremely enjoyable. I was completely liberated and content. I felt myself float up and over the room after the exchange with the light beings. I now felt warm and loved, and I was overjoyed to be there. My sense of self expanded as if I were dissolving into the warmth of this reality, becoming a part of a very wonderful whole. I wanted nothing more than to be this way forever. And just as I thought this, I found myself back at the entrance to the room of the light beings. Something didn't feel right, and I wondered what had happened. In front of the beings of light choir stand, I sensed the presence of my former guide interacting with another entity. They appeared to be arguing about something, and I hoped it wasn't about my presence. I couldn't tell what the issue was, but I had a feeling it was serious. I had the impression that I was being brought back to life on this earthly plane, and that the entity speaking to my guide was not pleased. I was starting to have a bad feeling about what was going on in front of me. I was being resurrected on the earthly plane, and I was about to leave this wonderful place. This entity did not seem pleased with the doctors who were saving my life, and neither did I. I wanted to stay, but I knew I had to leave, and so I returned. The next thing I remember is hearing the beeping of my heart monitor as I awakened from a 3-day coma in my hospital bed. I'm back, and I'm starting to feel some pains in my stomach. I can't move. I can't speak, and all I can think about is how beautiful it was to be on the other side of this life. Story number 2. This isn't an NDE or an OBE, but rather mystical experiences. It took me a long time to decide whether to share this, but after a lot of drawing and hearing Michael Card's song, God's Own Fool, I decided to write to you. It all started when I was about 9 or 10 years old. One night, I decided to believe in God and Jesus. A love and peace feeling came over me that I can only describe as being similar to what people experience during an NDE. I recall raising my arms to God. The next one happened when I was 17 years old. I was preaching Christianity at the time in school. I had a dream while sleeping. I saw myself lying in bed and then noticed an entity approaching from the left through the wall. The entity vanished as a result of my fear and panic. In my dream, I told myself that the next time it happened, I should not be afraid and instead ask Jesus for help. So it came back through the wall from the left, and I wanted to say, "In the name of Jesus, go away," but I couldn't. So, still in my dream, I decided to just say, "Jesus," but I couldn't speak. So I used all of my willpower and concentration to say Jesus. I awoke and said Jesus aloud. I immediately fell asleep again, only to wake up the next morning remembering my dream. The following one was when I was 21. I was living a worldly life when one night I felt God's love and forgiveness again. After a few months, I felt a calling from God to do His work and made significant changes in my life. The next one happened when I was 24 years old. For a while, I was having a dream in which a lion jumped on me. I then awoke. I noticed a man standing at the foot of my bed. It wasn't a real man, just the outline of one. I knew it was him who woke me up by jumping on me or something. He was taken aback that I'd awoken and could see him. He then walked away. It took some time for me to regain my composure. I jumped out of bed and searched the entire house, but no one was awake and there was no burglar. I also asked my family the next morning if anyone had been walking around the neighborhood the night before, and no one had. I was at my girlfriend's house 2 years ago. We had ingested some ecstasy. We were practicing breathing exercises together. I felt what I can only describe as arrows shooting from my spine up and out of my head at one point. I couldn't feel my body and felt like I was rising. I only recently discovered the Kundalini effect. Following this, we were sitting and having a casual conversation when I saw 3 screens, borderless TV screens, coming towards me and slamming into my forehead with my physical eyes. There were some images on the screens, but I couldn't make them out. The only information I received was that I am one of the witnesses mentioned in Revelation 11. I had never heard of NDEs before this point in my life. I've also read about all of the people who claim to be witnesses to the revelation. I'll be first to admit that I could be mistaken. I'm just a regular person with flaws. I don't have the power to perform miracles, and I don't want to kill anyone or bring pests into the world. As you can imagine, I began to seriously doubt my own sanity. My friend also had a vivid dream about me. A few months later, I was deeply troubled by this and cried out to God and Jesus. "Just relax and take it easy," Jesus said to me in my mind's eye. The first vision changed my life forever, and I began reading everything I could find about the mystical, occult, and religion. It was then that I became aware of near-death experiences. I then read on the website www.neardeath.com. Because of my Christian upbringing, this caused me some distress. I expected Jesus to appear in the clouds once more, so I inquired of Jesus as to his whereabouts. I felt this powerful love, and the information I received was not in my mind's eye, but rather feelings that contained information. There were so many angels, and Jesus was holding the earth in his arms and loving it. I was singing with them when they expressed their displeasure with the violence in Iraq. My brother was in a motorcycle accident earlier this year and was in a coma for 3 days. I was praying to God when I felt his or her love, and I saw in my mind's eye light shining down on me from a source high above, surrounded by angels. They were all accepting of me for who I am. It was a life-changing experience. I had an experience a few weeks ago where I embraced darkness and only found light within. But that's a story for another day. I'll also be the first to admit that all of these experiences are a product of my subconscious, but I couldn't deny the love even if I tried.